Hi, I'm Melissa. You wouldn't believe the betrayal I faced from my own family. At Thanksgiving dinner, my sister sneered, "Stop asking for money." Yet, I'd been paying off her $60 Kelvin's debt for years. After all I've done for them, this is how they repay me? But that wasn't the worst of it. It was the long years of manipulation, the lies, and the cold betrayal that truly shattered me. And now, I'm done. What happens next will leave you in disbelief. It was Thanksgiving evening, and the warmth of the California air, mixed with the smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie, filled the house. The suburban home was cozy, tucked away in the quiet part of town, where the only noise came from the occasional laughter that echoed from the living room. The family was gathered around, exchanging stories, eating, and catching up after what seemed like months of not seeing each other. But for me, there was nothing to celebrate. I was just another shadow in the room, an observer to the warm atmosphere that everyone else seemed to be soaking in. No matter how many times I attended these dinners, I never really felt like I belonged. I was always the youngest, always the one overlooked, always the one putting others before myself. As I sat at the table, the clink of silverware against porcelain, the casual conversation buzzing around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was invisible. I was used to it. It was a role I had learned to accept. Tessa, my older sister, always took the spotlight. She was the one everyone admired. She was the one with the perfect husband, the fancy house, the successful career. She didn't need to lift a finger to keep the family's attention on her, and she knew it. I stared down at my plate, pushing the mashed potatoes around. The mashed potatoes that I had made, because, of course, no one else thought to bring anything. The salad? Mine. The dessert? Mine. But no one noticed. Tessa didn't even look in my direction. She was too busy, regaling the family with tales of her recent vacation to Europe, her new designer purse, her husband's latest business deal. The usual. I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. I couldn't help but think about how many times I'd put her first, how many times I'd stepped in when she needed something, whether it was money, support, or just a listening ear. I wasn't angry at her. Not really. I just hated how I had allowed it to go on for so long, how I had become the one who was always there when she needed help, but never the one to be asked how I was doing. How I had sacrificed so much of myself for her, for this family. Then, as I was lost in my thoughts, I heard it. Tessa's voice cut through the noise of the dinner table, sharp and uninvited. "Melissa, stop asking for money. It's embarrassing." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I looked up, my fork suspended in midair. Everyone else seemed to pause, some awkwardly shifting in their seats. My mom, sitting to my left, avoided my gaze. I could see the pity in her eyes. She wasn't going to defend me. She never did. Tessa's lips curled into a smirk, her eyes scanning the room for approval. I could feel my face flush. It wasn't the first time she had made a comment like this, but it was the first time it had been said in front of everyone. The first time it had been this sharp, this pointed. I smiled, though the gesture was weak. "Of course, Tessa. I was just asking," I said, my voice betraying none of the hurt I felt. "It's no big deal." But it was a big deal. I had been asking for help for so long, and yet here I was, being mocked in front of the family. I had given her hundreds, even thousands of dollars over the years. Each time, I thought it was the last. But Tessa always had a new reason for needing more, and I always gave in. I didn't know why I did it, but I never said no. And now, here she was, mocking me like I was the one who had been taking advantage of her. I forced myself to swallow the lump in my throat and took a deep breath. The tension in the room was palpable. But no one else spoke up. No one came to my defense. Inside, I was boiling. The years of sacrifice, of silently helping her while she took everything for granted, were suddenly too much to bear. I tried to stay calm, but the resentment was rising to the surface. I had been there for her every time. She came to me for help, and I never once asked her how she was doing. I never once made her feel guilty for what she had put me through. The small loans had turned into large debts, promises to pay me back that were never kept. I could see it now, in vivid detail, the first time she asked me for help. She was struggling with her rent, she said. Just a small amount to get by until she got her next paycheck. But it never ended. A small loan turned into hundreds, then thousands, and each time, I believed her. I thought I was helping her, out of love, out of loyalty. But now, I saw it for what it was, an obligation, not a choice. I couldn't do it anymore. As the conversation continued around me, the words blurred together. I wasn't really listening anymore. I was too busy making a decision, one that I should have made years ago. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the banking app. I didn't hesitate. I canceled the scheduled payments to her credit card companies, the ones that kept her lifestyle afloat, the ones that I had been funding for far too long. As I tapped the screen to confirm the cancellation, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The floodgates of emotion had opened, and I wasn't going to hold back anymore. Tessa's phone buzzed. She glanced down at it, her face contorting in frustration. She looked up at me, but I didn't look away. The game had changed. The family was still oblivious, lost in their own worlds, continuing their meal. But I knew the storm was coming. As I stood up to excuse myself from the dinner table, I could feel Tessa's eyes on me. I knew what was coming. I had made my choice. But I also knew that this moment would change everything. This is where it ends, I thought. The question now was what's next. The night after Thanksgiving dinner was a cold contrast to the warmth of the day. The dim glow from the streetlights outside filtered through the blinds of my apartment. But inside, there was nothing but silence and the faint hum of my phone. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the glowing screen. It buzzed again. This time, more urgently. Tessa. It had only been a few hours since I left the dinner, but already she was bombarding me with calls and texts. I took a deep breath and let the phone buzz a few more times. I didn't want to deal with it yet. The decision I made to stop the payments hadn't felt real until now. A mix of pride and anxiety swirled in my chest. Had I done the right thing? I had to remind myself. I wasn't just stopping the money. I was stopping the endless cycle of manipulation. I was taking control of my life for the first time in years. But the guilt lingered. I had helped her for so long, thinking it was love, thinking it was a duty. But now, I couldn't help but feel like a fool. The phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. I stared at the screen, seeing Tessa's name flash on it. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up and walked into the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water. The house was eerily quiet. No one here but me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was truly alone. I took a sip and closed my eyes, trying to focus. It wasn't supposed to feel this heavy. I wasn't supposed to be this unsure. But as the minutes ticked by, the weight of what I had done began to settle in. I was sure of it. Tessa would never let this go. Finally, my phone chimed again. Another text. This time, I couldn't ignore it. I glanced down at the screen. It was from her. You've ruined me. I trusted you. And now I'm the one who's going to suffer because of your selfishness. I felt a cold bitterness rising in my throat. How dare she? After everything I had done for her. How could she accuse me of being selfish? Another text followed. I thought you were family. I thought you loved me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to reply, to defend myself, to tell her exactly what I thought of her, but instead, I just stared at the screen. I couldn't bring myself to do it. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Derek. I could already hear the frustration in his voice without even answering. He was probably furious with me too. It wasn't just Tessa now. The entire family would be in on it. I sank down into the chair by the window, the weight of it all crashing over me. My mind flashed back to all the times I had bailed Tessa out of a jam, all the times I had given her money, never once questioning it. She promised me every single time that she would pay me back, but she never did, and each time I swallowed my anger and agreed to help. How would I let it go on for so long? But this felt different. I had drawn the line. The phone buzzed again, and without thinking, I answered. Melissa. Tessa's voice was strained, almost desperate. Why are you doing this to me? What did I ever do to deserve this? I could hear her voice crack, but I didn't feel sympathy. Instead, a sense of clarity washed over me. Tessa, I said, keeping my voice even, I'm done. What the hell does that mean? You think you're better than me now? You think I don't need help? I'm your sister, for God's sake. Her voice was growing louder, angrier, but I didn't flinch. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting the silence speak louder than any words could. Finally, I spoke again. No, Tessa, I think you've been using me. I think you've been using me for years. I'm done enabling you. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing heavily, trying to collect herself. But the silence that followed was telling. She had no words. Don't act like you haven't been asking for help all along, I continued, my voice sharper now. You've been using me as your personal bank for too long, and I'm not doing it anymore. I could hear the emotion in her voice, but it wasn't sorrow, it was anger, rage. You've ruined everything, she spat. You've ruined my marriage, my life. You're a disgrace, Melissa. I should have known better than to trust you. And just like that, she hung up. I sat there, stunned. My heart pounded in my chest. I hadn't expected that, but in some way, I knew it was coming. Tessa's anger was a reflection of how entitled she felt, how much she expected from me without ever giving anything back. She was angry because she was losing control. For a moment, I just stared at my phone, the anger simmering beneath the surface. But then, something clicked inside of me. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. This time, I wasn't going to fall into the same trap I'd been in for years. The doorbell rang, breaking my focus. I looked up, startled, not expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my mom standing there, her face etched with concern. Melissa, why didn't you help her? Why couldn't you just do it one more time? I didn't know how to respond. The disappointment in her eyes was worse than anything Tessa could say. I had always been the one to hold the family together, the one to make things right. But this time, I wasn't going to. Mom, I said, my voice steady but firm. I had to do it. I've been helping Tessa for years, and it's never enough. I'm not her ATM. Her lips pressed together in a thin line, and she turned away without saying another word. I closed the door behind her and let out a breath. I didn't know I'd been holding. This was it. I had made my decision. But now, I had to live with it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging for anyone's approval. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what came next. The quiet of my apartment was both a relief and a torment. The hum of the fridge, the soft tapping of the keys on my laptop as I worked, nothing felt natural anymore. I stared at the screen, but my mind was elsewhere, caught in the aftermath of my decision. The calm of the room contrasted with the storm brewing inside me. It had been a week since Thanksgiving, and everything had shifted. I had expected things to get ugly, but the weight of the fallout felt so much heavier than I anticipated. Every time my phone buzzed, I dreaded seeing Tessa's name. Part of me wanted to ignore it all, pretend like I hadn't just blown up my entire family's dynamic with one simple act of defiance. But I couldn't do that. Not anymore. The decision was final. Stopping the payments was the right thing, wasn't it? My mind raced back through all the years I'd spent paying off Tessa's debts. All the lies she told to keep the money coming. For so long, I had thought I was helping her out of love. But now I realized love wasn't supposed to feel like an obligation. It shouldn't be a weight that crushed me every time I reached for my wallet. Still, doubt lingered. Had I made a mistake? I didn't have the luxury of second-guessing myself. Though, the damage was done. The phone buzzed again. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, my stomach tight. I should have answered sooner. But no, I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for another guilt trip. Finally, I took a deep breath and answered. "Melissa." My mom's voice came through, cold and distant. "We need to talk." I braced myself, waiting for the familiar sting. "What's going on, Mom? Why couldn't you just help Tessa out one more time? Why can't you see that she's struggling?" Her words hit me like a slap, each one sharper than the last. "I'm tired of being the one who fixes everything. Tessa's grown, Mom. She has to take responsibility for her own messes." "You don't understand," she said. "She's your sister. We're family." I felt my throat tighten. Every word she spoke felt like a weight, pressing down on my chest. "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "But it's not my job to sacrifice myself for her anymore. I'm done." There was a long pause, and I could practically hear her disappointment on the other end. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I replied, my hand gripping the phone tighter. "I've made my decision." The call ended with an awkward silence. The feeling of guilt started to creep in, but I forced myself to push it away. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going back on it. But then the text messages from Tessa started flooding in. "You've ruined everything, Melissa." The first one was short and direct, but the second one was longer, filled with venom. "I trusted you. You've always been selfish. You've never loved me." I read through the messages in a daze. My hands shook as I tapped the screen, scrolling through her accusations. "You never loved me." Those words felt like a punch to the gut. Tessa had always made me feel like I was nothing, like my sacrifices didn't matter. Now, she was trying to make me feel guilty for finally standing up for myself. I paused for a moment, staring at the screen, trying to steady my breathing. Then I typed out a response. "I'm not going to apologize for doing what's right. You've had enough of my help." I hit send, but my heart was racing. The fear of what was to come started to build in my chest. Was she going to blow up on me? Was my entire family going to turn on me? I know, but I couldn't keep living in the shadows. I couldn't keep being the one who put everyone else's needs first, while mine were always ignored. As I tried to refocus on my work, a thought hit me. Tessa's messages, her rage, this wasn't just about money. It was about control. She had controlled my life for so long, manipulating me with guilt and promises that never materialized. My phone buzzed again. Another message from her. I wasn't ready to read it, but I opened it anyway. "I hate you," she wrote. "You think you're better than me. You've always been better than me. I've always been in your shadow." I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of her words press down on me. She had always been the golden child, the one who got everything she wanted without lifting a finger. And now, she was trying to make me feel like the villain for finally breaking free. I felt a tightness in my chest. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the way I had been used, the way I had been conditioned to believe that I had to keep giving, keep sacrificing, keep pretending like everything was okay. No more. I turned off my phone, shoved it into my desk drawer, and stood up. It was time for a break. I needed space from the pressure, the guilt, and the constant weight of my family's expectations. I grabbed my coat and headed out the door. The brisk air outside felt like a slap to the face, but I welcomed it. It was the only thing that made me feel alive, made me feel like I could breathe again. I walked to the nearby coffee shop, hoping the warmth of the place would bring me some comfort. As I stepped inside, I noticed a family sitting at the table by the window, just like the one I used to sit at. It was a quiet reminder of everything I had lost, everything I was leaving behind. For a moment, I felt a pang of regret, but it didn't last long. I wasn't going to let myself break. I walked to the counter and ordered my coffee. As I waited, I thought about how I had always been the quiet one, the one who did everything for everyone else. But not anymore. I wasn't going to be the person who always bent over backward to please everyone. I had a right to live my life for me. I had a right to be free of this toxic cycle. A sense of defiance began to build within me, a quiet but sure force. This was just the beginning. I was done being the scapegoat. I was done being the one who always got the short end of the stick. My phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. I was done with that life. I was done with Tessa's manipulation, and I was done letting my family make me feel like I wasn't enough. The world was changing, and for the first time, I could feel myself changing too. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across my apartment. I sat by the window, staring out at the bustling city below, my mind still in turmoil. The sun was just rising, but I felt like I had already lived through 1,000 days. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just waiting for things to change. I was making them change. I had spent years thinking that sacrificing for my family was the right thing to do. But the reality of it had finally hit me like a ton of bricks. Tessa's manipulation, my mother's disappointment, the endless sacrifices that had worn me down. I couldn't keep pretending like it was all okay. Something inside me had snapped, and for once, I was choosing me. The decision was clear. I couldn't keep letting Tessa pull me back into her world of dependence and blame. I was done being the backup, the one who always bailed her out, only to be left with nothing in return. It wasn't love. It was a transaction, and I was tired of being the one paying. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. With shaking hands, I began to write the letter. The words were difficult, painful even, but they had to be said. I had to make it clear to my family that I was no longer their emotional crutch. "Dear family," I typed, "I'm writing this letter because I need you to understand something. The decision I made to stop helping Tessa wasn't easy, but after years of putting her needs above my own, I can't keep doing it. I can't keep enabling this toxic cycle. I've given everything I have, and it's never enough. I need to take care of myself now." I paused, my fingers hovering over the keys. Could I really do this? Could I sever these ties that had bound me for so long? Taking a deep breath, I finished the letter. "I love you all, but I can no longer be the one who sacrifices for everyone else. This is my decision. I can't keep pretending." I hit send, but a part of me didn't want to. I didn't want to face the fallout. But it was too late. I had already made my choice. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I didn't have to look at the screen to know who it was. Tessa. Her voice on the other end was sharp, demanding. "Melissa, what the hell is wrong with you? You've ruined everything." "I'm not doing this anymore," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I'm not going to be your ATM anymore. You need to figure this out on your own." "You think I can just do that? You're the one who always bailed me out," she shot back, her voice full of bitterness. "How could you do this to me? You're my sister." I let her words wash over me, the familiar guilt starting to creep in, but I pushed it away. This wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about me. It was about my boundaries. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said, each word feeling more empowering than the last. "But I'm done. You've had enough of me, and I'm not coming back this time." The silence on the other end was deafening. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd finally gotten through to her. But then, she spoke again, her voice venomous. "You've always been the better one, haven't you? You think you're so much better than me," she said. "You don't even care that I'm struggling." I wasn't going to let her drag me back into that hole. "This isn't about being better than you, Tessa. This is about taking care of myself for once. Before I could say anything else, she hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, the weight of the conversation sinking in. I felt empty, but strangely lighter too. The storm was just beginning, but for the first time, I felt like I could weather it. Later that afternoon, I received a message from my mother. I opened it hesitantly. "I don't understand why you couldn't just help her one more time, Melissa. She's your sister. You're all she has left." The words felt like a slap, but I didn't let them hurt me anymore. I couldn't. Not now. Not after everything I had been through. I turned my phone off. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I couldn't go back. I had drawn the line, and I wasn't going to let anyone erase it. That night, I took a walk to clear my head. The city felt different now. The familiar streets, the coffee shops, the people going about their lives, everything felt both new and old. I passed a family sitting at a table in one of the cafes, laughing and talking like they had no care in the world. A wave of sadness hit me, but I didn't let it break me. I kept walking. For so long, I had been the one who kept the peace. I had been the quiet one, the one who always made sure everyone else was okay. But I wasn't going to do that anymore. I wasn't going to be the silent one who just took it all. I had been pushed to the breaking point, but now I was pushing back. As I walked, a text buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, and for a moment, I froze. It was from Tessa. "Please, Melissa, I need you. Don't do this." I stared at the message, the words twisting in my stomach, but I didn't respond. Not this time. This time, I wasn't going to run back. But as I stood there in the middle of the street, the cold wind against my face, I couldn't help but wonder, what was I really setting in motion? What was the price of finally standing up for myself? The weight of the decision I made hung over me like a storm cloud. As I sat there, in the quiet of my living room, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor, I knew this was the moment everything would change. I had made the choice to stand firm, to finally stop giving in. The family, their endless demands, the guilt they heaped on me, it all had to end. It was time to stop being the one who sacrificed everything while receiving nothing in return. I stared at the phone in my hands, the message I had written to my family sitting unsent in the draft folder. It felt like the hardest thing I had ever done. It wasn't just a message. It was a declaration of independence, a claim on my own life. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my mind filled with doubt. Was this the right thing to do? What would happen next? Would they understand? Would they ever forgive me? But deep down, I knew I could no longer keep being the martyr, the emotional sponge for everyone else's problems. The letter was simple but clear. I'm done. I can no longer be the one who carries the burden for everyone else. I've given everything, and it's not enough. I need to take care of myself, for once. I hit send before I could think about it any longer. The seconds that followed felt like an eternity. My heart raced. What would they say? What would happen now? The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I knew what was coming. She had never been one to hide her disappointment. I took a deep breath and answered the call. "Melissa." Her voice was strained, heavy with emotion. "Why? Why would you do this? Why? Couldn't you just help her one more time? She's your sister!" The guilt was immediate, sharp. The words I had just sent were still echoing in my mind, but now they seemed distant. Was this the right thing to do? But no, I couldn't take it back. This was it. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I've sacrificed everything for her, for you all, and it's never been enough." "You're being unreasonable," she snapped, her voice breaking. "She's your sister. Don't you care about family?" The tears that had threatened to come earlier stayed inside. I had cried too many times for this family, for Tessa, for my mother's constant disappointment. I wasn't doing it anymore. I do care, but I can't keep being used like this, I said, holding my ground. I need to take care of myself. This isn't about money, Mom. This is about me finally taking control of my life. There was silence on the other end, the weight of my words settling between us. Then, in a tone I had heard too many times, she whispered, "You're making a mistake." "I don't think so," I replied. "This is the right thing for me." The call ended with a heavy sigh, and I knew the storm was just beginning. The next day, the fallout came like a tidal wave. My phone buzzed constantly, messages from my siblings, my father, distant relatives. They were all furious. Some were hurt, others confused. I had never seen my family this divided before. "You're selfish, Melissa," my older brother texted. "How could you do this to Tessa?" Tessa herself had sent me a barrage of angry messages. She called me everything from a traitor to a failure. The hurtful words dug into me, but for once, I didn't feel the familiar pull to apologize or back down. I stared at the screen, reading their messages, but I didn't respond right away. This wasn't about pleasing them. It wasn't about fixing things. This time, I was standing up for myself. Then came the call that really shook me. My mother called again, her voice trembling with anger. "You've abandoned us, Melissa," she said, her tone accusatory. "How could you do this to your sister, after everything she's been through?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. For years, I had been the one who picked up the pieces. I had always been the one who quietly gave, never asking for anything in return. But not this time. Not anymore. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said firmly. "But I'm done sacrificing myself. I can't keep carrying the weight of the family on my shoulders." Her silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice was strained. "This isn't how we were raised, Melissa." "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "but this is how I need to live now." After I hung up, I sat there, numb. It was over. There was no going back. I had crossed the line, but for the first time, I felt a sense of clarity, a sense of peace. This was what I needed. I needed space. I needed to breathe without the constant pressure of living up to their expectations. I needed to stop being the invisible one, the one who always kept the peace. I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. The cool air outside felt like a balm on my soul. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. I was walking for me. I was living for me. As I walked, I reflected on all the years I had spent trying to please my family. I had been the one who always made everything okay, even when it wasn't. But now, I realized that the only person I needed to make okay was myself. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. It was from my mother. She had sent me a message, a final plea. "We can fix this. Please, Melissa, don't throw everything away." I stared at the message, the weight of it heavy in my chest. The family was trying to reel me back in, but I wasn't going back. Not this time. The next message came from Tessa. "I'm done with you. I won't beg you anymore." I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. She was giving up on me. But for the first time, I wasn't begging for her approval either. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect. And for once, I wasn't running after it. The decision was final. But I couldn't help wondering what would the price be. I stood in front of the mirror, my reflection staring back at me. The soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I ran my hands down the fabric of my blouse, adjusting the collar for the umpteenth time. Today wasn't just another family dinner. This was it, the moment that had been building for years. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I had come this far. There was no turning back now. For the first time, I felt the power I had been lacking for so long. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't look at it immediately. I knew what it was, a message from my mother. probably. Or maybe Tessa. The same desperate pleas, the same manipulation, the same guilt. But today, I wasn't about to be pulled back into their orbit. I picked up my phone and checked the screen. No new messages, no calls. Just the quiet before the storm. I drafted a final message to my mother. The words feeling heavier than I ever imagined. I can't do this anymore. I've given everything, and I've been left with nothing. I need to take care of myself now. My finger hovered over the send button. It felt like I was sealing my fate. But deep down, I knew this was the only way forward. I hit send. There was no going back. I took a deep breath and walked into the kitchen to grab my purse. Tonight, I would confront my family once and for all. And no matter what, I would not be the same person I was before. The dinner table was silent when I walked in, the air thick with tension. My family sat around the table, my mother at the head, Tessa across from her, my siblings scattered along the sides. The awkwardness hung like a fog. They all looked at me, but none of them spoke. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, heavy with disappointment. But it didn't faze me. I took my seat, far away from Tessa, who shot me a glare that could freeze a river. This wasn't just a dinner. This was a battlefield. My mother cleared her throat, breaking the silence. "Melissa, we need to talk," she said, her voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. "What you did, you've destroyed everything. This isn't just about money. It's about family. You can't just walk away from us." Her words stung, but I held firm. I wasn't the same person who would shrink away and apologize anymore. For once, I stood my ground. Tessa wasn't about to let me off easy. "You think you can just cut us off and everything will be fine?" Her voice was laced with venom. "You've ruined the family, Melissa. You've ruined everything. I don't even know who you are anymore." I could feel the anger boiling in my veins, but I stayed calm. I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness anymore, Tessa," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the tension. "I'm standing up for myself. And for the first time, I'm not going to apologize for it." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's eyes widened in shock, and Tessa's face contorted in disbelief. They didn't know how to respond. For once, they were the ones left speechless. "You've always been the good daughter, the one who did everything right," Tessa spat, her words sharp like knives. "But now you're just selfish. You've abandoned us." "Maybe it's time someone did," I replied, my voice low but clear. "Maybe it's time someone stopped putting themselves last, just to make everyone else happy." I could see the disbelief in their eyes. This wasn't the daughter they knew. This wasn't the quiet, obedient Melissa who always did what she was told. No, that version of me had died a long time ago, and for the first time, I was proud of it. I left the dinner early, unable to stomach another minute of their venomous words. The drive home was a blur. The weight of the confrontation hung heavy in the air. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I didn't feel defeated. I felt free. As I walked through the door of my apartment, I took a deep breath. The silence in the room was almost comforting, but then my phone buzzed again. I already knew who it was. I unlocked the phone. A message from my mother. A final attempt at guilt-tripping me. "You've hurt us, Melissa. We're a family. Don't throw that away." I stared at the message for a long time, the words gnawing at me. But then I set the phone down and walked into the kitchen. For years, I had let them control me with their guilt, but not anymore. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Tessa. "I'm done with you. I won't beg you anymore." For the first time, I didn't feel the familiar pang of guilt. I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt nothing. I set my phone down and stared at it, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. This was it. I had made my choice. And I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. The next day, I received the final ultimatum. The family had reached the end of their rope. They wanted me to apologize and take back my decision, or they would sever all ties with me. I felt the pressure of their ultimatum bearing down on me. Part of me wanted to give in, to end the conflict, to bring peace back, but I knew deep down that was the easy way out. I had spent my entire life trying to please them, to make everyone else happy. But now I was ready to fight for myself. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. I could feel the emotional tug, the urge to cave in. But for the first time, I didn't feel trapped. I was free. I sent a quick reply. I won't apologize, I've made my decision, and I won't beg for your approval anymore. The message sent, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't easy, but it was done. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. It was time to stop living for them. This was my life, and for the first time, I was living it on my terms. As I stood there, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Tessa. I've had enough. I won't beg you anymore. The words hit me like a blow to the chest, but this time, I didn't react. This time, I knew exactly what I had to do. I stood in my apartment, pacing back and forth. My mind raced, and my heart pounded in my chest. The confrontation from the night before was still fresh in my mind, but now I felt something different. The anger was fading, replaced by determination. The shock from my family's rejection lingered, but it wasn't the crippling weight it once was. It was a reminder, one that pushed me forward, one that lit a fire in me I hadn't known existed. I had been waiting for validation for so long, but today, I was taking control. I walked over to the small desk where my phone lay. No new messages, no calls. It struck me this was the first time I was truly in control of my life, and I didn't have to wait for anyone's approval anymore. The pressure had always been on me, to be the good daughter, the dependable one. But I was done with that. I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and drafted a final response to my mother. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. I had to stop appeasing them. I can't keep doing this. I've given everything, and I've been left with nothing. I need to take care of myself now. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the send button. Was I doing the right thing? My heart raced, but deep down, I knew there was no turning back. I hit send. There was no more hesitation, no more doubt. It was time to stand up for myself. I felt the pressure rise as I picked up the phone again. I needed to take the next step. The lawyer's number had been sitting on my desk for days. I had been putting it off, but no more. I called, scheduling a consultation. The nerves hit me hard as I listened to the phone ring. My heart was in my throat, but I couldn't back out now. I needed to know where I stood. When the lawyer answered, I explained the situation. The weight of the conversation felt like a massive boulder pressing against my chest, but I was resolute. After hearing me out, the lawyer confirmed that I had a strong case. But there was a catch. Your family will fight back, Melissa. Be prepared for the emotional toll it will take. I knew what I was up against. The fear was real, but so was the sense of empowerment I felt as I listened to him. This was the first step in reclaiming my power. I wasn't just asking for my money back anymore. I was fighting for control of my life. I hung up the phone, taking a moment to let the weight of my decisions settle. I felt a surge of adrenaline rush through me. Yes, I was afraid. But for the first time, fear didn't control me. It only fueled my resolve. The next day, the email came. I opened it, and my mother's words hit me like a slap to the face. You're selfish. Ungrateful. You're tearing this family apart just for money. Her words didn't sting as much as they once would have. I had heard it all before. The next line was from Tessa. You've always been the problem, Melissa. You're never satisfied with what we give you. I felt the familiar pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I refused to let them manipulate me anymore. Not this time. My phone buzzed with another message from Tessa. "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this." I took a deep breath, staring at the screen. I knew what I was up against, but for the first time, I felt the clarity I had been missing for years. This wasn't about money or even about Tessa. This was about me, my worth, my boundaries, and I was done letting them dictate my life. I couldn't keep letting them win. It was time to face the truth, and I had to do it on my terms. I thought about all the years I had spent putting myself last, trying to please everyone else, the sacrifices, the endless bending to their will. But now, I had no intention of backing down. I made my way to my mother's house, determined. My hands were clammy, but I wasn't going to back out now. I had a conversation in my head that I'd rehearsed 1,000 times, but this time, I was ready to say the words. When I walked in, my mother was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with disappointment, but I wasn't going to let it affect me this time. "I've spent my life trying to make you proud," I said, my voice steady. "But I've learned that my happiness isn't in your hands anymore. I'm done giving you my power." The words hit me harder than I thought they would, but they were true. For the first time, I wasn't asking for her approval. I was telling her how it was going to be. Her face contorted in anger. "You've betrayed me," she spat, standing up from the table. "You think you can walk away from this family? You'll regret this." The words didn't have the same weight they used to. I was no longer afraid of her. I wasn't going to let her guilt me anymore. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness anymore, Mom," I said quietly, my voice filled with quiet conviction. "I'm asking for respect, and I'm done begging for it." As I walked out of my mother's house, the air felt different. The weight of the conversation still lingered, but there was something else now. A shift, a change. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked in. I didn't expect what came next. That evening, my mother sent me a message. It was brief, but it struck me like a punch to the gut. "You're no longer part of this family." The words stung, but I was no longer afraid. I took a deep breath, reading the message again. It was the final straw. The last push I needed. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't just about me standing up for myself. It was about freedom. Freedom from their control, their manipulation. And I was done. The next message was the one I had been waiting for. My phone buzzed with a new text from my mother. "You will pay for this. You're not part of this family anymore. Not unless you apologize." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing my response. "This isn't over yet." I hit send, feeling the power in the words. The rules had always been theirs, but now they were mine to set. I sat alone in my apartment, the silence almost deafening as I prepared myself for the showdown with my family. My mind kept replaying the events of the last few weeks. The confrontation, the threats, the manipulation. I had been pushed to the edge, and now I was standing on the precipice, ready to make a choice that would change everything. I stared at the evidence. I had gathered the emails, the messages, the financial records. It was all there. Proof of the emotional and financial manipulation that had been my life for so long. My fingers brushed over the papers as a heavy sense of resolve washed over me. I had been the doormat, the one who sacrificed everything for a family that never gave anything in return. But not anymore. This was it. The moment I would finally take control. I thought about my family, how they'd always tried to control me, guilt me into submission, how they'd made me feel small, insignificant. It was time for that to end. I wasn't just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting for my identity, for my right to live my life on my terms. I had been silent long enough. Taking a deep breath, I dialed the number for my lawyer. It was time to make this official. The consultation with the lawyer was brief but impactful. My heart raced as I listened to the legal advice. "You've got a strong case," the lawyer said, "but be prepared, they'll fight you on this." I wasn't surprised. I'd expected as much. What did surprise me was how calm I felt. I wasn't scared. I wasn't backing down. They'll try to tear you apart, the lawyer warned. This could get ugly. I'm ready, I replied, my voice steady, despite the knot forming in my stomach. The lawyer outlined the steps I needed to take, and by the end of the call, I had a plan. But there was still a part of me, a small part, that wondered if I was doing the right thing. What if this cost me everything? But the more I thought about it, the more certain I became. I couldn't go back. This was the only way forward. I hung up the phone, feeling both a sense of relief and unease. The battle was about to begin. I wasn't sure what the outcome would be, but I knew I was no longer afraid. The backlash from my family didn't take long to arrive. My mother's email was the first to land in my inbox. The words were harsh, accusatory, exactly what I'd expected. You're selfish, ungrateful. You're tearing this family apart, she wrote. How dare you? My sister's message followed shortly after. You're making a mistake, she said. You've always been the one causing problems. You're the reason we're falling apart. I felt the sting of their words, but something had changed inside me. For so long, I had crumbled under their pressure, but not now. I took a deep breath and reminded myself this was the price of freedom. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I let their words sit in the air, the tension between us growing thicker. But I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. I decided it was time for the final confrontation. I was done hiding. The confrontation took place at my mother's house, just as I had feared. I walked in, and immediately, the familiar tension was palpable. My mother was sitting at the table, her eyes narrowed. My siblings hovered in the background, silent but waiting for the drama to unfold. Her voice cut through the air as she spoke. I don't understand why you're acting like this, Melissa. Why are you pushing us away? You've always been part of this family. I took a deep breath, my pulse quickening. This was it. I've spent my life trying to make you proud, but I've realized that my happiness isn't in your hands anymore, I said, my voice steady. I'm done trying to please you. The room went silent. My mother's face twisted in disbelief. You're being ridiculous, she snapped. You owe us everything. You've been a disappointment, and now you're going to ruin us all. I stood my ground. I'm not asking for forgiveness anymore, Mom. I'm standing up for myself. I will no longer tolerate this treatment. I've got legal documents in my hands, and I'm prepared to take action. The shock on her face was almost gratifying, but it didn't stop me. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into submission anymore. My family's response was immediate. They stormed in one by one, voices raised in anger. How could you do this to us? My sister cried. You're tearing the family apart. You've always been the problem. I felt the familiar pang of guilt, but this time, it didn't hold me. I'd spent so many years allowing myself to be the scapegoat. I wasn't doing that anymore. You're making a huge mistake, my sister continued, her voice trembling with faux distress. You'll regret this. You've ruined everything. I held my ground. This isn't your decision anymore. I've made mine, and I'm walking away. Her words died in her throat. I could see the shock in her eyes, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. This was my life, and I was taking it back. But the family didn't stop there. They weren't done with me yet. In a final act of desperation, my mother threatened to expose all of my dirty secrets if I didn't back down. I'll ruin you, she said, her voice low and venomous. I'll make sure you never see a dime. I stood there, facing her. The fear was real, but so was my resolve. They could threaten me, try to destroy my reputation, but I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I've already lost everything, I replied, my voice cold. You can't take anything else from me. The words hit me harder than I expected, but I knew it wasn't over. Back in my apartment, I sat at the desk and signed the legal papers. My hands shook, but I was calm. This was it, the final move. I had filed the paperwork and my family would know soon enough. I was taking legal action. They could try to discredit me, smear my name, but I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to be their puppet any longer. The family retaliated quickly. The public attack came next, a smear campaign aimed at destroying my reputation. My sister, in an act of vengeance, had gone so far as to release personal and fabricated details of my life to the press. The court battle was about to get ugly, but I wasn't backing down. I had my lawyer, and I had my evidence. The battle was far from over. The final decision was mine. The stakes had never been higher, and I had a choice to make. I looked at myself in the mirror. The reflection staring back at me was different. I had crossed a line. There was no going back now. The final message came in, a warning from my family. I stared at it for a long time before typing my response. This isn't over yet. I hit send. The screen went dark. I've made my decision, I whispered, staring at the blank screen. Now it's time to see it through. I sat at my desk, staring at the computer screen. The legal documents were right there in front of me. My fingers hovered over the mouse, the cursor blinking, waiting. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me, but strangely, there was no fear, only resolve. It was time to send them my final move to reclaim everything I had lost. I'd been through so much, the manipulation, the guilt, the years of bending to their will. But now I was making a choice that would change my life forever. I clicked send, the sound of the mouse button clicking in my ears as a small but mighty wave of relief washed over me. This was it. I thought back to the beginning. The endless childhood lessons on how to please everyone, how to remain silent when my needs went unmet, how to hold everything inside while they demanded more. They always made me feel like I was nothing. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had a voice. It felt like a lifetime ago. In some ways, it was. But that was behind me now. I'd done it. I'd taken control. The phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the quiet of my apartment. I knew who it was. I took a deep breath before answering. Melissa? My mother's voice came through, sharp and demanding. What have you done? This is ridiculous. You're throwing away everything for nothing. I stayed calm, my voice steady. I'm done, Mom. I'm not going to be part of this toxic dynamic anymore. I've made my choice, and I'm standing by it. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a sharp intake of breath. I could hear the anger bubbling up, threatening to overflow. You're going to regret this, she spat. I'll expose everything. You'll see how this will tear you apart. Her words were meant to hurt, to manipulate, but I stood my ground. I wasn't afraid of her threats anymore. You can't destroy me, I said, my voice firm. I'm done being your pawn. I'm not going to back down. Her response was cold. You'll be on your own. I never want to see you again. The words stung, but only for a moment. I'd heard them before, in different forms. This time, they didn't have the same power. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of the conversation settle in. I felt a mix of emotions, fear, relief, sadness, but above all, clarity. I wasn't alone. I had myself, and that was enough. The next few hours were a blur of messages from my family, each one more hurtful than the last. You're selfish, my brother wrote. You've ruined everything. You've always been the problem, my sister added, a victim's tone creeping into her words. You don't care about anyone but yourself. And then the message came from my mother, a final blow. The family had decided they were done with me. You're no longer part of this family. We're cutting you out. At first, the sting was sharp, but then I remembered. This was what I'd wanted. This was what I'd fought for. To be free. I turned off my phone, shutting out the storm of accusations. I didn't need them anymore. I was finally free to be myself, no longer held hostage by their expectations. It's over, I whispered to myself, staring out the window, the sky darkening outside. It was a new beginning, but there was still so much left to do. The fallout from the family was swift. The news of the estrangement spread quickly. My name was dragged through the mud. They made sure everyone knew about my betrayal. My sister released private details about my life to the media, trying to discredit me at every turn. I could feel the weight of it all. The fear that came with the public attack, the anxiety of having my personal life laid bare. But I had to fight back. This wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about making sure they would never have the power to control me again. My lawyer advised me to file a counterclaim. "We'll make sure they pay for what they've done to you," he said. "This smear campaign is actionable." I gathered evidence, preparing for a legal battle that would define my future. But as I sat at the desk, looking over the documents, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Empowerment. I was no longer a victim. I was a fighter. The day of the trial arrived. Walking into the courtroom was surreal. The walls felt cold, the air heavy with anticipation. My heart raced, but my mind was clear. I was ready. The stand was mine to take. I'd never spoken my truth like this before. Not to a room full of people, not with my family sitting in the back, watching me. But I wasn't afraid. I began my testimony, detailing the years of manipulation, the lies, the financial control. As I spoke, I could feel the weight lifting from my chest, piece by piece. For the first time, the truth was out in the open. My family's lawyer tried to discredit me, twisting my words, but I stayed calm. I answered every question with confidence, making sure they couldn't manipulate the truth. When the judge finally gave his verdict, I felt like I could breathe again. The case was over. My family's claims were dismissed. The court recognized my right to live my life without their control. I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. I wasn't just free legally. I was free, emotionally too. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting at a cafe, sipping my coffee. I watched the world go by, the noise of the city outside blending with the hum of conversations. For the first time, I felt like I belonged in my own life. I'd made it through. The trials, the emotional battles, the public attacks. I was still standing. I thought about everything I'd been through, how far I'd come, and for the first time, I felt peace. I wasn't defined by my family anymore. I was me. Just me. And that was enough. As I finished my coffee and stood up to leave, I caught sight of an old friend across the street. We hadn't seen each other in years. I smiled. Maybe it was time to rebuild. Maybe this was the start of something new. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be.